pleasure to be here today with all of you. I'm very curious before I start off with the talk, which is, by the way, the first time I'm giving this talk in English. I'm very curious for all of you who are in this session. Where are you joining from? Where are you from? I'm curious if there's some people from Latin America, because the context of DEV.F happens very specifically in Latin America. So if there's someone here from the region, that would be great to know. And if you're from elsewhere, it would also be very interesting to know what's the makeup of this group, and from which places all of your nationalities are from. So you can go ahead and write that down in the chat, and I'll check out what's the international makeup of this talk. So I will share my screen now, and we'll get started. You can see my screen now, right?
Yep, we sure can. If you want to do, yep, perfect.
Excellent. I will. So this talk normally is, you could say that I give this talk in different settings. This time there will be some sections of the slides that I will just go over very fast, because it's not like the focus of this talk. The focus will be the one you mentioned, Leah. So just for starters, that's my email address. That's the website for DEV.F if you want to see more on what we're building, what our company does, although I will go into detail into that soon. So let's get started. Before I introduce myself further and talk a little bit more about myself, the main focus, this is more of an entrepreneurial talk, and it has, as Leah mentioned, it has a lot to do with me being non-technical and going into a business that is highly technical, which is teaching technology skills to other people, and then matching them with opportunities in the technology sector in terms of jobs. But it all started out of curiosity. These two logos that you see on the screen those are actually my two companies, because DEV.F was my first one, but then I started another one. Both were started not by accident, but yes, I never expected them to become businesses. I just thought they were going to be something fun to do, something I couldn't help myself from doing. And eventually they did turn into companies. And in the case of DEV.F, it has gone so much further than we ever envisioned. So that's one of the main things in this talk, how an experiment can sometimes go so much farther than we could ever expect it to go. That's me with the red hat there. This is from the first crazy experiment. Well, this was the crazy experiment with Aire Libre, which is the second company I started. And just to show you how crazy it was, this was an experiment in which some friends and I, and then not just friends, but people who got excited with the idea, we set off to run 60 miles in the Sonoran Desert in northwestern Mexico, a super remote area. There's like drug dealers going around there. There's nothing there. There were like wild animals. And we decided that we wanted to do like a super long run through this virginal desert. And we just did it because we thought it would be fun to do it and document it and give a unique perspective about running as exploration. And we never thought it would, but it ended up becoming also a company. This is just a fast forward to actually early this year. We were named one of the 30 under 30 businesses by Forbes in Mexico, because that crazy run that we didn't know what was going to happen ended up turning into something bigger. In this case, Aire Libre Running, which is the name of the company, turned into a tourism company in which we offer experiences for runners. And so runners join our experiences, which happen in different parts of the world, and basically in amazing natural places and with amazing natural landscapes, and with combining running with meditation, with yoga, with sustainable eating. We do these week-long experiences that people pay to attend. And we're doing these experiences in, for example, in Patagonia, in South America, in Canada, in the US, in different places in Mexico, in Israel, soon in Scotland, in Japan, in Mongolia, in like all over the world. And it started with the crazy run that I showed you close to my hometown. So you never know what a crazy idea could evolve into, right? So that's the case of Aire Libre. And then with my first company, which was DEV.F, which is the company I work in full time in Aire Libre, I'm part of the board and I'm part of the directors, but I'm not operational because I just can't. If I could multiply myself by 2, I would, but that's still not possible. So coming to DEV.F, which was started in 2014, back then I had known John Gottfried for a couple of years. And this was the first website that we launched. This was our first prototype. Also out of an idea that came about because of curiosity. We were very active in hackathons. I actually know John Gottfried from Startup Bus, which is, it's a crazy hackathon on a bus. And we loved hackathons, and we noticed how hackathons had this very, very powerful educational potential. People learn so much in a hackathon and skills that are highly relevant for today's world. So we thought, how can we sort of emulate what happens in a hackathon in an environment that is more like a school? So we launched this experiment of a school in Mexico, the first of its kind. Back then, the concept of a boot camp was very new. It was something that was happening only in the US and perhaps in Europe, but not in an emerging country such as Mexico. And we launched this first experiment. It was a very basic website with just one button in which you could apply to the school. And we moved it around. We promoted the project, and fortunately, it did resonate with people, and we got 120 applications. And out of those 120 applications, we chose 17 students that we started with. And that was like the start. That was in July 2014. Actually, it was exactly 6 years ago. Again, with DEV.F, we also made it to the Forbes list in Mexico. Actually, this one was like the president that actually helped the Aire Libre project also make it to this list. But also with this, it turned into a company. It turned into a proper school. This is a screenshot of our 6th anniversary. It's a company that's been going on for 6 years. We raised a round of investment. We're getting close to 5,000 students so far. Actually, this is an old slide, so this number is a bit outdated. Last year, we were selected by the IDB Lab, which is the innovation lab of the Inter-American Development Bank. We were named the top technology school or boot camp in Latin America. We were also part of the Google Accelerator in Latin America for tech companies. We were one of the 9 startups in all of Latin America to be selected, to be pushed and boosted by Google experts. We've run over 100 batches of students. We are present in 30 locations with the school in 10 different countries in Latin America, going from the southern tip in South America, in Chile and Argentina, all the way to northern Mexico in Hermosillo. So like I said, you never know how far an idea that came about just through mere curiosity, how far it can go. These are also some logos of all the companies we've worked with. You probably don't recognize many of these logos unless you're from Latin America, but some of these companies are huge. Like Bimbo is one of the biggest food, company that makes food. One of the biggest in the world, actually. Coppel is also one of the biggest retailers in all of Latin America. Tecnológico de Monterrey is one of the biggest, is probably the biggest private university in all of Mexico. And we've worked with all these companies along with Rappi, which are these startups that have grown so much. These companies have hired our alumni. They've hired us to give their workforce specific courses. And also our alumni have gone into big tech companies such as Uber, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, etc. So same case with DEV.F, it went farther than we ever imagined. A little bit more about me, as you've noticed by now, I'm really into running. I run a lot, like probably, 50, 60 miles a week. I've run marathons. I've done ultra marathons. I just love running. I also love the outdoors, so I also do rock climbing, lots of it. That's another sport I really enjoy. I like mountaineering and alpinism. These things, I think, keep me from going crazy with the crazy life of starting a business and making it grow. So these are the elements of work-life balance. And this is a picture of old me. You can tell that it's an old picture because there was a bit more of hair up here. This was around 10 years ago in 2011. And this was a pivotal moment in my life. I was in college back then. I was 23 years old. And I went to do a summer school program in Stanford. It was a program that was put together with a San Francisco startup and academics from Stanford University. And I joined in for that. It was like my last chance to get money out of my dad before I graduated, and he would never give me any more money. So I would be on my own. So I went to do this program in California, in Silicon Valley, and I discovered this world that I didn't know existed. But more importantly, I met this group of people. This was a very adventurous phase in my life because I met these guys in the course. I was going to school, but they were doing a startup. They were already entrepreneurs. They have raised around the funding. They gave us a tip before we started with the program. They said, look for the people who are the most different from you. And I went and joined forces with the Koreans. I thought, well, I think the Koreans will be fairly different culturally from me. And so they ended up offering me a job. I hadn't even finished college yet, but I decided to put college on hold, put it on a pause, and joined this company which had raised capital, which was growing. I was the only Mexican. It was literally 15 Koreans, a Chinese person, and me. So it was like super exotic opportunity for me to really dive into a culture that was very different from what I had known so far. And it was a very interesting experience for me. I ended up moving to San Francisco, and I lived there for a while. And I really learned in this whole Silicon Valley environment about what it is to launch a tech company and help it grow. It gave me very valuable lessons for doing it myself later on. And then I ended up moving to South Korea, which was a country I had never visited before. I lived there for close to a year. It's this country that's so different from Mexico and from the reality I got to know here. So it was a really good experience. And also the most important thing is that me as a non-technical person, I majored in business. I got to see how important it was to at least know what technology is about, know what software development is about. Definitely technology and software are making the world go very fast. And whoever is not close to this realm and doesn't know how to talk fluently in the language of technology, I think they have a serious handicap in order to do business nowadays. So I ended up just going deep into it because I realized that it was an important skill to have. And then coming back a little bit to the time we're living in, I mean, I'm sure you've heard this a lot of times, not only in your fellowship program, but elsewhere. We're going through the fourth industrial revolution. So nowadays there's this time of just like so rapid technological change. We have all this explosion of new technologies such as artificial intelligence, blockchain, software that is at a point where it had never been before, biotechnology, wearables, all these different trends that when they go together, we just have this context in which change is constantly happening very rapidly. And so this is a time in which whoever can adapt the fastest, the people who can adapt the fastest are the ones who are going to be most successful and able to take advantage of all these new opportunities, which I'm sure is what all of you are doing. So in Mexico, we have a challenge. It's all of Latin America is a region of emerging countries in which these things are not so obvious because there's a lot of poverty. Only in Mexico, around half of the population in Mexico lives in extreme poverty. We're talking about around 60 million people who don't have access to a computer, who don't have access to quality education. So this is not so obvious. In countries like the United States or in Europe, a lot of people are following these trends. But in Latin America, there's just such a big lagging in this sense of learning technology skills, right? Obviously, I mean, if this is an old article, but it's a classic of Mark Andreessen. Many of you probably know who Mark Andreessen is, but if you don't know, this guy is one of the most important entrepreneurs in the decade. Maybe some of you were not born in that decade. I was a kid in that decade. But this guy made the first internet browser with a graphical interface, which became Netscape, the Netscape Navigator. And then that was the president of Firefox, Google Chrome, Internet Explorer, all of those. And this guy sold the company. He became extremely rich, and he's one of the most influential investors in Silicon Valley today. And he wrote this post about why software is eating the world. If you can check it out, it's very good. But I mean, you know these things. The biggest companies nowadays are software companies. You can see it here in this slide as well. This is pre-COVID, but I mean, COVID has just accentuated this crazy growth in tech companies. This is this is a news piece of when Google reached the $1 trillion mark as a company. And to put that in perspective, the size of Mexico's economy is $1.2 trillion. So Google is practically the size of the economy of Mexico, and Mexico is a country of close to 130 million people. This is not something for us Mexicans to be proud of, but it's the way things are. And it's just the leverage that technology brings to doing business. These things are probably obvious to you, but these are some fun facts that led us to push our vision with DEV.F. This is also a TED Talk by a Mexican MIT professor. And he shows how 55 engineers at WhatsApp were able to produce more economic value in a year than 15 countries in Central America and the Caribbean. So 15 whole economies with all of their businesses, with all of their governments, doctors, lawyers, etc. All of their GDP combined is smaller than what 55 engineers produced in WhatsApp. So this is just, again, the crazy leverage that technology can give to business. Some more fun facts. You probably recognize some of these logos in the screen. We don't have these things in Mexico, so many times when I give talks here, I have to explain what each is. But you know these very well, especially the people in the US. The red logo is Pinterest, and Nordstrom and Macy's are huge retail stores that sell like very high fashion clothing. And they're very successful stores and that have been in the history of the US forever, since many decades ago. And Pinterest got its IPO last year in 2019, yes. And so they entered the stock market, they became a public company. And as a result of that, Pinterest is now worth more as a company, both than Nordstrom and than Macy's. Of course, COVID did not help Nordstrom and Macy's because now people cannot even go to these stores without fearing for their lives. So that didn't help their situation. But again, it's a 100% software companies in which people can pin pictures of furry cats or interesting elements for your home, compared with stores that carry all these fashion labels and clothing that is very expensive. That's the power that software has nowadays. Here's another example. You probably know Slack. You probably use it in your Fellows program. It's the chatting software for companies and for projects. Slack also did its IPO last year, and well, that brought its valuation up to 23 billion. And because now probably more people around the world are using it because of doing home office and working from home, it's probably even bigger now, which is the case with Zoom, another software company that this is back then when it did its IPO. Its valuation jumped to 19 billion, but now with the whole pandemic, Zoom's market capitalization is getting close to 50 billion. So we're talking almost 3 times the value it had when it had its initial public offering. And that amount is now bigger than the top 6 airlines of the world. Well, no, this is more than 6. This is 7. Top 7 airlines in the world combined are smaller than Zoom, which is the software we're using right now to give this talk. I'm gonna jump a bit over this, but this is basically going more into detail about how the top jobs in tech in Latin America are, of course, tech jobs. They're the best paid. There will be also a deficit in Latin America, according to a study by the Inter-American Development Bank, that by 2025 there will be a deficit of 1.25 million software developers in Latin America. So this is the amount, this is the size of the opportunity for people who learn tech skills and software development skills. They just have so many opportunities for finding a very good job that pays them very well and that allows them to grow professionally in a way that maybe they wouldn't have access to if they wouldn't learn these skills, right? Here are some more studies that show how all these skills are very important. And here, since many of you are probably have a technical background, there's also the part of emotional intelligence and soft skills. Life is not just about writing code or building interesting algorithms. It's also about these human skills of empathy, being able to communicate well, being able to navigate uncertainty, ambiguity. All these skills are also highly valued by the top companies in the world. On the data part, I mean, you probably know this too, but the fact that many companies have become artificial intelligence machines that can capture data and then analyze it to be able to build predictive models and so forth. That's a phenomenon that made possible that you have the first picture in which Jeff Bezos is starting out and you can see his office is all dirty and ugly. And then less than 20 years later, Jeff Bezos is the richest man in the history of mankind, which, you know, Amazon didn't exist in the mid-90s. And now it's this huge giant that is bigger than the oil companies and the retail companies. And just in the pandemic, we've been seeing that headlines such as this one, in which Jeff Bezos grows like each month he grows his fortune by $10 billion. It's just ridiculous. And obviously this has to do with the fact that Amazon has become so good at analyzing the data of its clients. I always say that Amazon knows more about my shopping habits, obviously, than my mom. And my mom once had me inside her belly. But Amazon just has much more data about me and can decide what's the best gift for me and my birthday, which my mom can't anymore. And again, this picture is stressing the importance of hackathons. Also, something interesting that you will notice in this picture that is unique to Mexico and Latin America is that technology is a male-dominated industry. As you can see, there's not a single woman in the picture, I think. If we're lucky, there was like 1 or 2 that day. We're trying to change that in Mexico. We're trying to get rid of this taboo that technology is not an industry for women. We're trying to promote the idea that anyone can join the tech industry, and there's no reason for there to be a lot more women in this industry in Latin America. So it's something we're also trying to push through DEV.F. Here we start talking a bit about hacker culture, which I think was the core philosophy in DEV.F. and that really helped us to build this business. But basically, our definition of being a hacker is it's what we said about the fourth industrial revolution, right? It's a time of constant change, and the world is just being transformed so quickly. And hackers are the people who are able to embrace the uncertainty because they have 2 superpowers, which are resilience. They are able to adapt to any situation, and also resourcefulness, which is that with very little resources, sometimes just with a computer and by connecting to the internet and being able to use what's out there in the internet, be that information or be that just building software, can help them solve many problems in their own lives and in the lives of other people. So that has been like the basic idea. I use the slide just to make a statement about how new business leaders in today's time are more sort of these kind of like hacker people than it was in the old days when it was just like business people with their ties or with their people with amazing slideshow presentations. Now it's usually people who solve problems using technology, right? And so people who embrace this sort of mindset for the fourth industrial revolution are the ones who are going to be better equipped for when that huge wave comes, which is already here basically. You have all the tools so that you can surf that wave like somebody who's a pro at surfing, Kelly Slater, I don't know. Or it can be a tsunami that's going to just destroy everything in its path, and it's going to drag the people who haven't prepared well for that reality, right? And unfortunately, that's the situation of millions of people in Mexico and Latin America, and that's the problem we're trying to change. Going more into hacker culture, the way we define it, and this is like a very simple formula that can be used basically by anyone, even if their background is technical or non-technical, that's really not so relevant. But it's learning technology skills. And when we say technology skills, we don't mean that you have to have a PhD in in artificial intelligence algorithms. No, it's knowing the basic stuff, like what is a website, what's a server, why use JavaScript and not Python, what's data analysis, what is artificial intelligence and what can I do with that, what is blockchain, what can I do with that, what is user experience design and why is it important. Just knowing all of this basic stuff can make a huge difference in the lives of people who are out there in the workforce. So that would be the first mandate, right? Just learn the basic stuff about technology, even if you're not super fluent, but you know the basics. And combine that with a cultural mindset. The cultural mindset, I will go more into detail of that, but it's basically like a geeky mindset. For example, giving value to always be learning stuff and not just stop at whatever you learned in college. If you study engineering, not to make your life 100% about engineering, like venture yourself out to learn about economics, about politics, about sociology, about psychology. All of these other disciplines can be something that really complement the base, which is what we studied in college or what we have focused our attention most in. Learn by doing is another important one. Sounds pretty basic, but many people are fearful of just jumping into things, and sometimes jumping into things is the best way to learn. One example of that is my experience with rock climbing. I mean, it's something that I learned 2 years ago. Before 2 years ago, I had never done any rock climbing. At first I was so clumsy, I was so weak, I was so bad at it. And I think now I can defend myself and I can do more of a decent job. So it's jumping into things and trying them out. And even if we feel dumb at first, it's just going to be a transitory phase. And then we will feel more and more comfortable doing new things. Also, the community aspect is pretty important. Sharing with others is a way to consolidate our own new knowledge or skills. So it's always a good idea to share with others. The pleasure for solving problems. This is particularly important in a region such as Latin America, where there's so many problems. We just go out to the street and there's traffic, there's pollution. Mexico is this country where 100 people get murdered every day around the country. It's just something inadmissible. So it's a way of learning how to take these problems, which do sound tragic, but turn them into opportunities. What can I build that will make this problem better? Maybe I can create an app that will help people when they're being followed in Mexico, or an app to send a warning to the authorities if there is a section of the city that doesn't have good public lighting, like the street lights. These sorts of things. I mean, we can build things creatively that can probably help with these sorts of problems, and that also, and for that to become something that we enjoy, searching out problems and working to make them better. Obviously, coming out of the comfort zone, that's a classic one. I always mention this is a picture from a movie that's called Spare Parts. Maybe some of you watched it, but this is based on a real story. These young guys in the picture, they are. I'll tell their story really fast, but they were sons of undocumented migrants from basically from Mexico and from countries from Latin America. Three of them didn't have proper documents for being in the U.S. They were in this high school in the middle of nowhere in Arizona, no access to like resources, basically not a very fortunate situation, but they were super passionate about robotics. They joined this contest for robots that swim underwater, like aquatic robots. And they got to the final, basically to the finals of the competition. They had gotten there. They built their robot with like parts that they got from the trash, by seeking out donations, by getting a check from their grandma, basically in a very super scrappy way. And then when they got to the final, they competed versus MIT and they beat them in the finals. So this is like this is the embodiment of hacker culture, which is even if you apparently don't have access to resources, if you're very passionate and creative and you seek out the right tools, you can basically solve any problem that you're truly interested in. And again, the community aspect, I always stress that a lot. We're getting to the end of this talk, so we're gonna go through some conclusions and like a summary of what we talked about today. And remember that I'm very interested in hearing your questions. So please prepare your questions. I'll be done in 3 minutes. The first important conclusion is the part I talked about, experimenting. And experimenting out of a drive that comes from curiosity. It's just do stuff and do experiments just because you're curious, just because you would love to see what happens if you carry out this experiment, right? And again, I go back to the examples of DEV.F. DEV.F really started like super humble beginnings. We were 3 co-founders. We only had $100 between the 3 of us to invest initially into the project. But, you know, we had friends at Google, so we got a Google sponsorship that helped us launch. We had some friends that let us use their co-working space for free. And, you know, we just you know, used our available resources, which weren't necessarily money. And we launched this project, and it turned into this company that has positively impacted 5,000 people in Latin America so far, right? And it's continuing to grow. And the vision is to get to 1 million people in Latin America in the next 5 years. It's ambitious, but we think we can get there with the proper resources. So go ahead and experiment out of curiosity. The second conclusion would be that in the case of Latin America, but this can apply to any of you who are currently present in emerging countries, be that in Asia or Middle East or Africa or in Latin America. But these regions are just so full of untapped potential. There's just problems which are opportunities everywhere in these types of countries, right? So, and here are some experiments that are interesting. This is a startup that was created by a young Mexican when he was 18 years old. He created a bra that can detect mammary cancer. Is that how you say it? Like bad tumors that women get in their breast. So this can identify the tumors and help them get medical attention beforehand when they can still be when it's still not so dangerous. So that's a good example. This was a Mexican young person who did this. So it's possible. We're starting to see these cases of Latin American startups being acquired by crazy amounts of money. So that's not just something that is available in the US or in Europe. These things are happening in emerging countries. This is a Chilean Mexican company, which is called Corner Shop, which was acquired by Uber recently by close to $500 million. So it's also solving these kinds of problems sometimes also results in crazy wealth and financial success, which can be a motivator for some. We have Rappi, which they started in Bogota, giving out donuts for free in a park. And nowadays, last year, they were one of these investments by SoftBank. They got $1 billion as an investment. I think it was a Series C or a Series D. And that valued them as $1 billion company, which was the first in Mexico since the decade of the 2000s when Mercado Libre was the unicorn of Latin America. Now it's Rappi. So these things are happening in the region. The third conclusion is the definition that we assigned to the word hacker. And this is our official definition at DEV.F, which we like. And it's the person who knows what to do when they don't know what to do. So basically, when you don't know what to do, it's not a reason for panicking or for thinking that all is lost. It's the moment when you start learning stuff and just looking around creatively, using the resources you have at hand to actually find the way and discover what it is you have to do, even if you initially didn't know. This is just a cover of an Economist magazine that I ran into a couple of years ago, but it talks about how lifelong learning is now an economic imperative. And I'm actually reading a book right now that the author interviews Elon Musk, and he's talking about why he started SpaceX. And there's a point where the author asks him, oh, so what did you know about rockets and about, the science behind the spaceship? And Elon Musk says, like, I knew nothing. Like, I just started reading a bunch of books. So it's really possible with that ingenuity to just jump into things and start learning. And as you learn, the path unfolds itself, right? And then the last conclusion before ending this is, it says the last and the most important. You have to find other crazy people to join you on this path. And that's where the community aspect comes into play, because this is, and I mentioned that hackathons are a great place to meet these crazy people that will be ambitious enough to join a project with a big mission. In the case of DEV.F, these are my two partners. I met them both at hackathons. Because if you think about it, when you go to a hackathon, especially when it's a hackathon that happens on a weekend, you will find people there who, instead of just sitting on their couch watching TV, which is not a bad thing, but instead of doing that, you will find them at a hackathon, just using these crazy amount of hours and not sleeping, drinking energy drinks, just to find a solution to a problem. So that's a good kind of intensity that you can seek out. And people who have this intensity, this passion, are usually people who could be potential good business partners. And the same with Aire Libre. These are my partners, Dan and Mau. And these guys, the filter was that they agreed to go to the Sonoran Desert in northwestern Mexico to run 60 miles in a day. So, I mean, there was something there, there was potential. So very important to be a part of a community, to meet people, and to have access to intelligent and passionate people who could potentially join you on whatever journey you decide to embark on. And in the end, what drives us at DEV.F and what drives, I think, our generation, even if our generation is not the same one, because I'm like 32 and you guys are probably like 20 something, but from my generation to yours, I think we're driven not just by making some money to pay the bills. I think we're looking for something else. And in this case, what has driven us at DEV.F is to use technology and to use hacker culture to actually make people's lives better, to alleviate some suffering, to bring technology tools and knowledge and skills to people who don't have access to them, so that they can improve their lives, so that they can have access to a higher income and to be able to give a better life to themselves and their families. So this is something that can be within reach if we use all of these tools in a smart and creative way. And this is a picture I took at the top of one of Mexico's volcanoes. There is some snow and glaciers in Mexico. We don't just have beaches. And thank you. We can now go on to the Q&A part.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much for that presentation. Does anyone have some questions? You can unmute, or you can throw those in the chat as well.
Let me open the chat. Okay, I hadn't checked where you're from. So there's a person from New Zealand. I'm dying to go to New Zealand. They have great mountains there. Rafael from Nigeria. Prosper also from Nigeria, and Yulia from Denver.
Yeah.
Good mix.
Got Peru as well.
Okay.
Do you have any initial questions as of right now? I know one question that a lot of our fellows have that you can start off with is what were you really doing before you started these business ventures? So what were some other maybe jobs or careers that you were a part of before this journey?
So, I mean, sometimes my friends make fun of me because of how different how my experiences have been. Like my life has been a zigzag, ranging from as a teenager working at a Hollister store in Arizona, which for me was my way of like being a Mexican, but being able to go into sort of like an American Pie movie. Because, you know, in Mexico culturally it's just so different, and I had this chance to experience the American partying and all that part. And then when I was 18, I almost became a priest. I almost went into the seminary and like entered priesthood, which was something that many people don't expect from me. And then after that, I went into college. And when I was in college, I started my first company, which was an advertising agency. And then I ended up living in San Francisco, and I got into tech, and I worked with the Koreans for 2 years. And then after finishing off with the Koreans, for a while I had some savings, and I just organized hackathons with friends because I fell in love with hackathons, with the kind of people who attend hackathons. It was something that was new to me, and I found it very valuable. And then I ran out of savings, so I had to get a job again. And I worked at another tech company in Mexico. It was a startup that when I joined it at the time, I joined because I really admired the CEO and I wanted to learn from him. I thought he was a great entrepreneur. And so I joined his company when it was just 6 people. And I realized very fast that it was not my thing. So I was just there for 6 months. Which was the time when I organized Startup Bus, and that's when I met John Gottfried. And this company now, I was there when it was 6 people, and now it's around 150 people. So it grew like crazy. And I knew that was gonna happen because this guy is just so talented. But right around that time was when I got the idea for DEV.F, and I had met Elias in Startup Bus, and I had met Enrique in Startup Weekend. And we launched the school in 2014. So that's like the summary of what happened before that.
Yeah, that's one thing that isn't usually thought of is people's career journeys are a bit of a winding road and not directly a direct path. So having that context is great. We just had a question here in the chat.
Okay, so from Naomi, where are you planning to do your next hackathon, and is there a particular theme? So actually, since hackathons have been like our motivation since the start, and something that was always part of the core culture at DEV.F, hackathons are now usually they're part of what the students learn when they take our courses at DEV.F. So we actually gave it a name that since you're from Peru, you're gonna catch the funny part of it. We have a hackathoncito, which is like a small hackathon, because we do it like in an evening. So normally hackathons are like a whole weekend or 2 or 3 days, but the hackathoncito is just like 3 hours from 7 to 10 in the evening, and this is just to get our students' feet in the water in this whole, because in my case, when I first went to a hackathon, I didn't even know that it was possible to build something that works with technology in such a short time frame. I thought, you know, when people created new technology products, I imagined like a team of scientists in a bunker, like working stealth for 6 months, you know, to produce a prototype. And then I went to a hackathon and I realized that you can build a prototype in a matter of hours, right? So we want to bring our students to experience that and to open their minds to the fact that if you want to build something new, you can just like go into lockdown for a weekend, which in the pandemic is not so difficult, and just work intensely at something. Invite some of your intense friends over so that they'll work on that with you, be that remotely or in person. and in a weekend you'll have something to show for it, right? So, and many times in hackathons, those projects end up becoming something else, which is something interesting too. So to answer your question, I'm not normally attending hackathons anymore, but hackathons are so much a part of DEV.F's life that I feel like I'm constantly participating in hackathons. We actually ran one recently, like a month ago, with one of like the biggest media outlets here in Mexico. We partner up with them, and we had this hackathon to develop COVID solutions for small businesses that were negatively affected by the lockdown. So like building technology tools that small businesses could take advantage of to just like help out their situation, right? So yeah, that was the last one. I don't have one in the near horizon, but like I said, in DEV.F we have the hackathoncito once a month. It's open to anyone who wants to participate, not only to the students. So if you want to be a part of it, you can just like follow DEV.F in our social media. In most of the social media channels, we're present with this handle, and we usually announce these events, and anyone can sign up. So that's a way you can join if you want, and they're free of charge and just open to the community who's curious or just wants to participate in these sorts of things.
Another question some of our students or fellows have had for our entrepreneurial speakers is, what was a few things that you didn't expect or didn't know when you're getting started out that you could pass along to those that are also interested in starting a business?
I think the most, in my experience, the most important aspect that I overlooked, that I just thought it wasn't going to be that big of a deal, that it wasn't going to be so much of a problem, was the people aspect. It's really important to think very hard about who you're going to partner up with, because it really is like a marriage. People think sometimes that it's a bit exaggerated to say that your business partners are going to be like your husbands or wives, but it really is like that. Sometimes it's even easier with a real wife or a real husband because, well, I don't know, you have kids and you can make up and things like these. But in this case, your baby is your business. And in this case, there's not even the romantic part to it. So you have to make up without the romantic part. So really think hard about who you're going to partner up with. I would say that it's better to optimize for the human quality of the person than for the intellectual capacity, because some people are probably, sometimes they're mesmerized by someone who is like super smart, but in their human side, they are maybe people who fall easily into conflict, or maybe people who are dishonest, people who maybe are in it just for the money and not for the mission. These sorts of differences can really cause problems later on down the line. So just think very hard before you formally partner up with something, and try to optimize for human qualities, for someone that you can blindly trust, and that you can be sure that they won't stab you in the back later on because of money or because of other things. That would be something that I would really recommend. That in my case, I didn't learn that until I was already into the business.
And then another question is usually around funding. So how was that for your business, and what was that journey like for you?
That was interesting, because I think in that sense, DEV.F was a little atypical, because when we started out, like I said, it was an experiment. We really didn't know that it was going to become a business. So at first we weren't even thinking about funding, because we weren't even sure if it was going to be a business. So the first step was like transitioning from an experiment to something that could be sustainable, to something that could make money, that could at least sustain itself. And then that was like a long phase of maybe 3-4 years. And it was until we were perhaps into our 4th year when we started really seeing potential for scaling with the business. We developed a model for opening new schools at a very low cost. We developed technology so that we could manage many school locations with a small team. So that started enabling us to grow faster. We also realized that the market, the problem that we were solving was just like so much bigger than we thought of at first. Because at first we were just thinking, oh yeah, people who like hackathons and people who want to learn tech, geeks in general, you know. But then we realized that this is such a big problem. There's millions of people in Latin America who don't have access to quality education. And if we teach them tech skills, that is something that hacks the lack of access to education, right? Because with these tools, they can go an alternative path to higher education and just learn the skills necessary to land a well-paying job in the tech industry. So once we realized this, that's when we started thinking about funding. And then also we had something that I think was a good sign in our case, which was that we had many mentors who were constantly helping us out. And we started telling our mentors that we were thinking about raising funding. And basically close to 100% of our mentors said like, oh, that's great. I was waiting for you to say that because I would love to invest, you know? And we felt that was great validation because our mentors knew the good, the bad, and the ugly about DEV.F. And they still wanted to invest, which was a great sign because usually when you pitch investors, you're pitching the best things about your business. And well, that obviously helps them say yes. But with our mentors, we were basically being very candid and honest about everything, and they still wanted to invest. So that convinced us even further that we should really go the venture capital path. That's when we decided to raise a seed round. Also, one of our mentors is a VC who has a fund in Mexico, and it's actually a fund with a good reputation, and that they're growing, they're doing a good job. They've had some good companies in their portfolio. And this guy said like, yeah, I'll lead your investment round. Totally makes sense. He had a very clear vision of how we could go from the seed round to a Series A, which is actually where we are at right now. We're preparing to seek out our Series A round. So that's how it happened. And along with this fund, we weren't even planning of going after funds. We were planning to raise angel investment from our mentors, but we decided to make it a friends and family round with this mentor with the fund actually qualifying as a friend or family, right? And that's how it was. It was very organic. It was very gradual. And that's how we got to that path. But it really took time. It wasn't something that we thought from the start. It was something that just very naturally happened, and we got to that point, right? And now I see that Naomi has another question. Have you made any efforts to advertise DEV.F to smaller towns in Mexico and or other countries? And if so, what kind of challenges did you encounter? Actually, that's one of our upcoming phases of growth and of escalation. We want DEV.F to be such an easy to deploy model that we can basically open school locations in whatever town, be that a town of, I don't know, 5,000 people or a mega city of 25 million people, such as Mexico City or Sao Paulo. We wanted to get to that. One of the things we built that was necessary for that is we built an internal software that it's a learning platform. And this learning platform is necessary so that students can have a more autonomous experience of learning. Also with COVID, the experience, the whole situation with the coronavirus, the lockdown, forced us to do something that we weren't going to do until later on, which was try our classes remotely. We were an in-person school always. We always taught our classes physically. And the coronavirus situation kind of forced us to try out the remote online path. So this is something also that is very interesting for this scaling up. Because, for example, now we will have both kinds of learning available to our students. You can choose a path that is in person and you can attend a physical school, or you can take your classes online remotely, and that's actually a way in which we're going to be able to reach so many more people. Because, for example, we've had people from Peru. Actually, we don't have a physical school in Peru yet. We have schools in Colombia, in Central America, in Argentina, in Chile, but not yet in Peru. We have put our eyes in Lima, but before we got there, the coronavirus happened. But we've had many students from Peru, so now we have data that we can actually start the school in Lima. We think our chances of success will look pretty good there because we've had clients already. And with the help of campus and with the help of remote instructors, we think we will be able to offer our courses in more and more cities and countries, regardless of the size of the place that we are trying to reach, right? So I would obviously we've had some challenges there have been places where the adoption of our service has been very keen. People have really taken up the service and we've had many clients, for example, in Colombia. And in other places, business has been slower. For example, in Panama, business has not been as fast as in Colombia. But those are kind of the challenges. But what we're doing is finding ways that whenever we have a school location that is not advancing, not making lots of progress, mechanisms that we can apply there to maybe advertising, maybe through local tech communities to make the DEV.F better known, and that way we can reach more students, right? But that's just one example of the challenges we've had. We've had many others, but since we're getting to 6 o'clock, I was gonna stop there with that question.
Perfect. Yeah, well, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it and sharing your insight on how to start businesses and your career journey. So, yeah, if you have any closing thoughts, otherwise you can end it there.
It was great to be here. I knew this was going to be a very interesting group. Thank you for all your questions. Thank you for challenging me to do this talk in English, which I never had before. And yeah, I hope some of this information can be useful, and also wish you lots of luck in your fellowship program.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much, and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you. Take care.